I think my mission coming in here today in a lot of ways was to sell you on the importance of water, which when you think about it, we probably shouldn't need to be sold that much on that. It's 70% of the earth, 75% of our bodies. We kind of recognize that, but I think that makes us take water for granted in a lot of ways. Where DOA is situated, though, in southern Nevada, she doesn't have the luxury of taking that for granted, as we just saw. And it's very exciting to see the innovative solutions, and a lot of it revolving around the data that they can use to better track and manage their water usage in such a water scarce environment. I will be talking a little bit about that, kind of some similarities, but I do focus mostly on the industrial side. So where I am with Nalco Water, I work with some of the heavy industries, think global chemical power generation, that use a lot of water in their operations day in and day out. And one of the ways that we can sometimes that we're working to highlight the importance of water is what we call the water energy nexus. And so energy, there's a lot of energy that's wrapped up in water use, which we'll get into here in a little bit. But before I do that, I mean, there is a little bit of, as I mentioned, some overlap. So this is actually my wife and my eldest daughter. So this isn't the Hoover Dam. I live in Northern California, and this is the Shasta Dam on Lake Shasta in Shasta County. There's a lot of Shasta naming up here, but this is California's largest reservoir, and this was taken at the end of 2021. And where we're standing here to take the picture, we probably should be about 100 feet underwater. This was not supposed to be an island that we were on, or a little peninsula. And what I have circled in the background, that's actually part of the crane that was used to construct the dam, which was, obviously not supposed to be above the water level. But that was the state of the world from just a couple of winters ago. Now, fortunately, our water levels are quite a bit higher after a decent rainy season. But one of the kind of main challenges that we face now that we're starting to see some water fill up again, people get excited, but the first thing that the rain washes away is the memory of a drought. And so in certain regions around the world, even if the water scarcity issue isn't front and center, there's still some underlying things that we need to be aware of and pay attention to, because even though the water may be flowing, there's a lot that goes behind the scenes where you may not always understand the specific level of water use. And one of those areas, and Doa mentioned this too, is around data centers and even smartphone usage. I mean, all of us right now, to be able to use this platform, are consuming quite a bit from data centers. And with population growth and the increased use of smartphones, everything is running with data centers in the background. And so with over 60% of the global population connected to all these data centers, they consume 20% of the world's power, or will over the next couple of years. And for each of these data centers, they use an equivalent of 120,000 Olympic-sized swimming pools per year. So you think about all of the water that goes into just allowing us to kind of run our everyday lives. And it's something that we don't necessarily see front and center, because it's, in southern Nevada, where if they had an issue, they'd turn on the tap and maybe no water came out. This is something that is a major pull and a strain on the water in the world around us. And that's not even taken into account when you look over at the right side, the amount of water that goes into the creation of these devices. So, sorry, this was a slide from some of our European teams, so it has it in liters. But there's a lot of water that goes into not only the mining of rare earth materials, but the construction of the smartphones themselves. There's a significant amount of water that is used. And that's not to say that smartphones and data centers are the sole thing to blame. I'm just trying to use this as a way to illustrate that where we are right now it's a pretty critical time when you think about how the world we're living in from a water stress perspective, and how that relates to climate change. So with all of the water that's withdrawn each year and in increasing population, by 2030, the global demand for fresh water is expected to exceed supply by 56%. So that's with the world population likely increasing by some estimates 35%, which also will show that increase the world's need for energy by 25 to 50% by 2050 as well. And not only that, but water and energy together, they really are business imperatives. And it was mentioned there in that little bit of Q&A after Doa's presentation. They're critical for growth and profitability. And they mentioned, investors are looking for what is your water strategy. So it's coming to be a little bit more important as water is getting put more in the focus, which at Ecolab, that's we're trying to do, and that is our mission as a water company at Nalco Water. And just a quote from Andrew Steer from the World Resources Institute, that water stress is the biggest crisis no one is talking about. Fortunately, this was in 2019, so there has been some progress, and we're starting to see some signs that the water crisis is starting to attract the attention of investors, of shareholders, and of regulators. But there's still a lot more that we can do, and a lot what we need to do right now is to be educated on water availability, and also how it relates to energy and energy consumption. Here's just a visualization of water availability. I did not talk to Doa ahead of time, so we each have our little raindrop slide here. I kind of liked hers a little bit more, if I'm being honest. But this is the total annual precipitation and how it goes into various ecosystems and how it is consumed. One thing that's not on this slide, so less than 1% of all the planet's water is available for our use. So while we kind of live in this kind of idea that there's such abundance, there's a limited amount of water that we actually can use. And that's not to mention some of the challenges that Doa had mentioned around within the Colorado River, and how there's evaporation, and all the water in the river doesn't necessarily flow and get taken advantage of. And that middle little sliver there too, that's the human consumption. So you can almost think of this in some ways, I guess part of the economic and social water piece as well, kind of some of the water uses for an organization like the Southern Nevada Water Authority. And then there's also specific facility allocation as well. So from an industry standpoint, there's a certain amount that goes directly into businesses. So the customers that are that Nalco Water would be working with to help them identify their own water strategies, or develop their water strategies, I should say. And if you drill down another layer, so with that global water usage, a lot of it goes to agriculture, 22% to industrial, and really from our numbers, only 8% to the municipal. So there's quite a bit that is being used kind of outside of the municipal. And you can think of what municipal water usage is almost the water that you can see. It's when you, like I said, when you turn on your tap, or it's when you see sprinklers on, or you go to a hotel and the shower works. But one of the issues that we see with water is that it is kind of out of sight, out of mind. A lot of the water that's used is hidden. So agriculture, we know things need to get watered for food to be grown, but we don't see it on a daily basis. And then the industrial side too, to go back to the data center example, there's a lot of water that's being used every single day that we don't specifically see. And so it can be hidden by, whether it be distance or global supply chains, the obscurity in agriculture. And then also, there's a lot of water that's literally hidden in groundwater sources. So again, trying to just put out there that the water that we have access to and the water that we see isn't telling the full story. So there's a lot that's going on kind of behind the scenes. But one of the things that we're focusing on here at Ecolab then to bring water more to the forefront is by making it or connecting it specifically to energy. So the energy use for water, agriculture doesn't need a ton of energy. There's certain amounts for municipal, but where I focus in is on that industrial side, which for the energy that's used to move around water and heat it and cool it, that sort of thing, that's where the primary amount of energy is used. So that's the connection that we're trying to make, so that we can kind of take the water conversation and then add it to really in a lot of ways what has been getting most of the attention. That's around carbon emissions when you think about the overall sustainability strategy. So how do we bring water more to the forefront so that people can be aware of it and make decisions about it and incorporate it into their strategy? Because like I said, in business operations, water is being moved, cooled, heated, treated and this requires a significant amount of energy. And not only that, but there's costs associated with this as well. So a number of organizations, they may see a water bill that would come from the Southern Nevada Water Authority, and there may be a sewer bill as well. But there's a lot that's kind of hidden underneath the surface around that. There's potential revenue risk, first of all, the impacts of water use versus availability. Based on the water that's required to do new business. So if you're starting a new development, water has to be a focus on that. Do you have enough water to actually produce whatever it is you're trying to produce? There's also energy related costs towards these heating and cooling mechanisms that you need to take into account. There's regulatory risk, which can also impact reputational risk. So if there are health issues with poor effluent water quality, that's going to be a significant issue that organizations will need to overcome. And really, again, it's making that connection between water and climate. Water is the primary medium through which we really feel the effects of climate change. I mean, if you think about it, how do we talk about the impacts? It's about glaciers that are disappearing, water levels rising, major cities like Miami or New York or LA disappearing because they're going to be underwater one day when you look at some of the kind of doomsday models. That's because climate and water systems are inextricably linked, and changes in one system will induce important and not necessarily linear changes in the other. So that begs the question for us at Ecolab: what can be done? And what we're doing, again, it's highlighting that connection and providing climate intelligence, recognizing that everything does start with water. And so this is a solution that we've developed or are developing, designed to help make informed choices on how to balance productivity and sustainability goals, because there's a number of trade-offs that need to happen when you're putting all of these together, because some of those indirect links that I just mentioned. And so we want to have solutions available to our customers and our stakeholders to achieve energy efficiency through smart water management. And that's because water has this high capacity to transfer energy. So that's heating, that's cooling, that's moving. And in an industrial environment, 35 to 75% of the energy transfer is through water. So a lot of the energy bill, the energy consumed, is going to be because you're heating water and you're cooling water. And so controlling that water energy by being more efficient with how you use water, that leads to decarbonization. So you can start to actually make progress towards your sustainability goals when you implement smart water management. And it's about maximizing efficiency and minimizing your risk. So there's this kind of teeter-totter here where we're constantly trying to find the balance between efficiency, which would be optimizing your overall energy resources, and then reliability too. I mean, you talk about sustainability, obviously in terms of environmental impacts, but also sustainable business. And so how do you manage that water risk to ensure that you are keeping your facilities up and running? And so it takes data, it takes insights and information to be able to make better decisions in this dynamic environment that's constantly changing with all of these different variables. And so it's a very data-centric environment. But the good news is we're at a place where we have information, we have data that we can pull together to generate insights, not only for the sake of just having insights and knowing more, but also can we take action with those insights and make true improvements in our operations to save water, to save energy, to reduce greenhouse gas emissions. And it's really about setting a roadmap here as well. So identifying first what water-related risks in financial terms as well. So this is important. You know, water, we can recognize that water scarcity is an issue, but how do you actually put dollars and cents to that to recognize, okay, if we implement some sort of water project, what's the ROI going to be? So there needs to be an identifiable ROI on projects. Otherwise, you know, business as usual might still continue. And so after that, you want to implement these. So again, you want to make specific targets and implement those targets because it's about that action, and then also tracking as well. So tracking performance over time and continuing to revisit your smart water action plans over time. And through this, basically, you get better water treatment. So that's across your products, automation, monitoring, communication, and better water management overall water stewardship, if you will. And again, I mentioned one of the big problems is around visibility. So there's a significant visibility gap to manage water effectively, or there has been in the past. Customers and overall industry don't necessarily have visibility on how water is being consumed and where it's going across their enterprise. But the good news is that through improved data and data collection and new sensor technology, and then being able to tie into different systems, you're able to better monitor how water flows throughout an entire facility. So you have the water coming in and it doesn't just go into a black box, but you're able to better monitor and then measure and then track how water is being used throughout a facility and across the enterprise.
Hey, Michael, just
yes,
so this is analogous to when people put in sensors to track power consumptions in complicated plants, large structures. That's been widely deployed. What I think is much less widely used is the same approach, but for water.
Yes, and I love that analogy. And I think too, when you think about the, you have like the LEED certified buildings, for example. I think that some industries are further ahead when it comes to their energy reduction and tying all that together. I think some of these large, heavy industries are in some ways a little bit behind because these facilities might be older, and so it hasn't necessarily been a greenfield construction to give it the latest and the greatest types of technology. But yeah, I think that's a terrific analogy there. So we're getting that up to speed from a water perspective, because the eyeballs, I think, had been more on the carbon side than they had been on the water.
Got it. One of the things, as we want to at least open up for additional questions, if you could comment specifically on what are Nalco services? Is it products? Is it services? Is it putting in place these sensors? Just so people have a tangible idea of what you offer them.
Yeah, so we do a number of things. So we at our core are a chemical company, and so we provide the chemistry to keep water clean and make sure that the water quality is good going throughout a facility, so that there's no fouling, no scaling, anything that would interrupt business operations. And then on top of that, we layer in digital solutions to be able to track and manage how that water is used, track different projects, making sure that actions are created, and then developing new digital solutions like this climate intelligence that allows you to have actionable insights to make decisions in real time for each operator on each shift, so that they can kind of pull whatever levers they need to be more efficient and effective and make real progress towards their climate goals. There's also equipment and other sensor things, but those are kind of like the core of what we do. Yeah, and I know we're getting up on time here. I kind of skipped through that a little bit, but I guess for the sake of time, we are committed to sustainability at Ecolab. We're helping customers save billions and billions of gallons of water a year. We have a goal of 300 billion gallons saved by 2030. Last year we hit 215. There's a live counter on our website here. This is just to show that we're helping customers do this, and it'll be great too to connect with anybody on the line afterwards. And I definitely want to connect with Doa as well. I feel like there's a lot to learn from her and her presentation. I'm glad that she was able to go first and kind of sell us on the need to focus more on water and sell water to people.